Welcome to Great Brook's Survey Design Educational Series. In this series, yours truly, Dr. Fred Van Bennekom, analyzes surveys I have been invited to take by companies. These reviews are spontaneous and top of the mind, since most survey software tools do not allow you to go back through a survey a second time. And actually, in many respects, it's the best way to analyze one, is to actually experience the survey. That's what I try to do when I'm looking at a survey somebody's asked me to critique, is to experience it before I go into deep analytical mode. But please do bear with me during pauses as I go from screen to screen, as I will be viewing the survey quite literally for the first time. We hope you find these reviews interesting and we hope they help you design your own surveys better. Great Brook's mission is to educate its clients on better, more effective survey design practices. Great Brook conducts several survey design and survey data analysis workshops each year across the U.S. and abroad. On screen, you see the schedule as of this recording, but you can find the current schedule at greatbrook.com and follow the link to our events page. On that page, you'll also find links to descriptions of our workshops and to my book, Customer Survey. Okay, let's get on to the survey. So first of all, what we see here is the invitation that I got by email a few weeks ago from SwissCom.com regarding the use of a product called Pocket Connect. So let me give you a little bit of background here. My wife and I spent Christmas week in Switzerland, had a wonderful time, and I decided to rent what's called a Pocket Connect. Most of us will call it a MiFi unit while in Switzerland. It basically gave us internet connectivity anywhere we had a cell phone connection, which essentially was everywhere in the country except in the tunnels when we were riding the trains, and there are lots of tunnels. But it was very reasonably priced, roughly $40 for 5 days of use, and then $6 per day after that. Very well designed service system, except, and I don't know whether I'll get a chance to mention this when I get into the survey, the thing worked beautifully right through Christmas Eve, but then on Christmas morning and for the next 2 days until we flew back home, I no longer got data transmission. My guess is, although I don't have it, I'm not sure, my guess is that the entitlement was set up incorrectly. Now, positive statement, when I contacted Pocket Connect, Swisscom, the support people didn't help me very much at all. They ignored I didn't get any reply from the support organization, not surprisingly, on Christmas or on December 26th, which is also a holiday in Switzerland, St. Stephen's Day. But then after they confirmed that they received the unit returned from me, I wrote to customer service and I said, look, it didn't work. I think I'm owed a refund for the last 2 days' usage, and they actually refunded my entire price, which is something that, frankly, I think Sprint could learn something from if you go and read my article about Sprint on my webpage. So that's the background. Again, it was a great way to go. It basically gave us not just internet connectivity, but with Skype on our iPads and our phones, we in essence had a phone connection anywhere we had a cell phone connection. Via the MiFi unit in case we had to make a call. So first of all, notice here it's in both English and German. Down the bottom part of the screen, it's in German. I was a little surprised it wasn't in French also, since French is one of the major languages in Switzerland. And it says, not long ago you used a Pocket Connect and we've been celebrating ever since. It's a little bit overly positive. I know this is canned stuff, but in my situation, it wasn't really a celebration. This is a little bit of loaded language, as if we should also be celebrating as well. And I'm not a real fan of putting loaded language anywhere in a survey, including in the invitation. So it says it's a 5-minute feedback. We'll see whether that's true or not, although I'll be going through it more slowly than a normal person would. And now we've got the link here. It's a SurveyMonkey one. Clearly, they're using SurveyMonkey in the German subsidiary, and they're providing a reward for participation. I could win one of the following prizes. Now, this is one of the dangers of doing a survey in multiple languages where one of the languages isn't your primary language. I'm an American. I speak English only. I know that. I know that. I know a little French from my high school French classes, but that was a long time ago. But here we see the first price, second price, third price. Of course, they meant prize. We all get that, but this is where it makes a lot of sense if you're surveying internationally to have a native speaker in that language do a proofread of the item. And this is just an example, a relatively minor one, but it does show the issue. Thank you very much for your support. It says the data collected will be treated confidentially. I think that's very important that you make a statement confidentially and that it's not going to be used for advertising purposes and it will not be forwarded. Those are very important to me in an invitation. When I get a survey invitation that doesn't say something similar to that, in particular the confidentiality issue, I am going to be very suspect about being honest and forthright. I wrote about this in regards to a survey done by the United States Department of Health and Human Services of patients in hospital stays where there's no guarantee of confidentiality. Again, go to my resources link on my homepage and you'll find that article pretty quickly. It was written in December of 2012. All right, so let's get on to the survey. I actually, prior to coming in here, clicked on that link. I've actually enlarged the type font a little bit so that it comes across a little better in QuickTime. They've restated a little bit here. We very much appreciate it if you would share your Pocket Connect experience with us. They've restated the 5 minutes, and here they have spelled prizes right. Now, one thing I'm not thrilled about is they basically have repeated the information that was on the email here on the first screen. The reason I don't like this is that when I start seeing repetition, I am no longer reading. I'm going to go into scan mode. In this case, there's nothing critical here for me to know, but if they had added anything extra below the 3 prizes, I wouldn't see it because at this point I'd already be moving on because this is all redundant. Interestingly, they spelled prize correctly, and again, down the bottom we see it in German. So it's interesting to me that it is in English first and then in German rather than the inverse. I don't know whether they look at my profile. They probably have my profile that I'm an American and that English is my obvious language, but maybe it is English first. It wouldn't surprise me because we saw that in Switzerland, that English in some cases was the first language presented, not German, not French, not Italian. All right, so let's get on. Now they're asking me the language of the survey, obviously, English, because I do not speak any German. Where did you hear about Pocket Connect? And it says, I can give multiple answers. That's useful here for this kind of thing. I actually first heard about it in an airline magazine. I flew Swiss Air, or Swiss more properly, a month earlier than my trip, coming back from Dubai, and I saw it there. So, Swiss Airline magazine ad. I'm actually going to do them the favor of telling them that, although I'm not sure whether that's Flyer. SwissCom is the actual telecom company, so there's nothing else here. But I'm also now obviously a promoter. Overall, how satisfied were you? Boy, this is a tough one because I was very satisfied for the first 5 days of use, and then I was very dissatisfied for the last 2 days, plus the lack of support, albeit it was on Christmas, but still, how much slack do you cut? I paid for something I didn't get the value that I should have gotten from it. So here, I've got to give it a middle score. Because it was, then they fixed it in the end. So this is a real challenge. Where am I? I'm clearly not out here. I'm clearly not there. I'm somewhere in the middle. And it's a real argument over, say, these 3. I'm going to be a little generous because they did fix the problem. They engaged in service recovery. So that made me happy in the end. But there were parts I was unhappy about. What did you not like about the Pocket Connect? Problems with the device? No. Speed of the connection? That was a little bit of a problem in some cases because we were on 2G service in some limits. I didn't even know there was a 2 gigabyte download limit. Honestly, I don't remember seeing it. Problems with the reservation, that's the one I'm going to say unless I see something else. It really wasn't a reservation because I didn't reserve it. Lack of support and support not available, I'm going to say that I didn't have a reservation. If I understand, this is an important point. I do not know what they mean by reservation for sure. You can reserve them in advance. I did not. I picked it up in the Zurich train station at Zurich Airport when I bought my Zurich Rail Pass. I just bought it right then and there. So I don't think that's it. Extension of the rental didn't work. That actually is my guess of what happened. So I'm going to say that because I think that's it. I'm actually going to give them a little information. Didn't know there was a data download limit. So I'm going to tell them that. It's a little extra information. Okay, there are 1 million reasons to be online. We are wondering why you wanted to be online during your stay in Switzerland. Please give us at least one example where and for which purpose you used Pocket Connect to be online. Now this actually helps explain why they probably had English only, is that most likely the people who rent this thing are not Swiss nationals. Duh. So they're assuming that most visitors to Switzerland's first language is probably English, which is probably reasonable, except for people coming from across the border from Germany. All right, so what are the purposes? We are also interested in unusual examples of use. I get this. They're looking for information probably for marketing purposes, but also maybe to find out, they haven't thought about how it could be used. So this is an interesting question to me. An example. They give us an example. In general, I don't like to put examples in surveys because normally when you present an example, that's what people are thinking about, which may create a bias, limit the thinking. In this case, it might make some sense, especially because they want to know sort of a who, what, when, where, and how down here. Now, how were we using it? Where? Well, we obviously used it in our hotel room while walking around Bern, which was one of the cities we used. If you were on the move, how? Walking. Also on the train. And that was actually really nice to be able to, on the train rides when we weren't looking at the scenery. It was very foggy, so there wasn't much scenery to see. We were actually able to actually do a little bit of planning for the city we were going to. What did you do? Surfed city information and checked email. That was primarily what we did. Why? On holiday. It's kind of an odd way to put it, but there we are. Now they want more examples in hotel rooms. We weren't on the move. What did we do? Surf. Checked email. I don't need to tell why. Well, I work for myself. I had to keep current with my email while on holiday. There we are. And I think that's enough examples. I don't think there was anything else really exciting that we used it for. Oh, I'll give another one. Where in hotel room called relatives on Christmas Eve using Skype. I need to tell you why. And I'll put a little smile after that because I'm being a little snide there. I mean, it's obvious why I would call on Christmas Eve. All right. Where do you use Pocket Connect? They just kind of asked me that. We didn't have a car, but we used it on hotel, on train. We probably did use it in a restaurant, although I can't remember exactly where we did, but we probably did check it. We definitely used it on foot. And I probably used it on a tram. We used their public transportation system extensively. Okay, so now they're asking, and this is an interesting one for me, did you have an exceptionally positive or negative experience thanks to Pocket Connect? Now that language, maybe it's a translation issue, assumes that it's positive, because a negative experience, you wouldn't say thanks to Pocket Connect. So the wording here is again a little bit loaded because it's driving us towards that thinking about positive experiences. In my case, it was negative. They don't ask. Now, interestingly, I don't know why they did this. They have no and yes, and there's a colon after the yes and not after the no. Minor thing, but they're asking positive or negative, and they're not asking whether it's positive or negative. So here, clearly I'm going to be writing in a whole lot. I'm at the end of the survey. I'm going to come back in and type something in there because I believe with the back buttons I can get there. But for now, I'm going to go on because I've already said about the negative experience I had, but they fixed it in the end. So I'm going to come back to that. Oh, I'll have to, they won't let me go on. Interesting. So given that I said yes, they're making me type in something. Right now I'm just going to put a period and I'm going to go on. Now, here's the, in essence, the Net Promoter Score question, which frequently is asked first. This is on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-point scale. Would you recommend Pocket Connect to your friends? So usually it says friends or colleagues. Not at all recommend, surely recommend. In this case, the one weird thing about this is I wouldn't recommend it to any friend. I'd recommend it to a friend who was traveling to Switzerland. And I actually think you have to put that kind of a qualification phrase in here because in many cases it just doesn't make sense. Because why would I recommend this to a friend who isn't going on holiday to Switzerland? Now, would I recommend it? Yeah, I surely would. Surely recommend is an odd word to use. Usually it's highly recommend. And notice the negative endpoint is not at all recommend. That's a little bit awkward wording, and many people now are phrasing the bottom end of the scale, not just say I wouldn't recommend, but I would recommend against, which is a more negative statement than simply saying I wouldn't recommend. It's saying I would tell you not to do it. So let's move on. Do you have any suggestions on ideas on how to improve the product? Again, now I understand the purpose of the colon. If you check yes, they want something in there. I don't really have any suggestions. I thought it was a pretty darn good product, even to the point where you returned it. The case that the thing came in had a prepaid postage on it, so when you were all done, you know, at the airport, for example, you'd just drop it in a mailbox and it got mailed back to them. I was a little concerned about that because you know, we're talking about a several $100 unit. What if it, you know, I had no receipt that I had mailed the thing, so I would actually prefer to return it to some place where I get a receipt of return. Now they're asking me some demographic questions, and this is probably the last screen. And what I don't like here is they don't try to soft pedal, so to speak, the demographic questions. Why do they want to know my gender and my year of birth? I'm not really thrilled about telling them my year of birth. I don't really want to tell them how old I am. So I'm not going to check that, and we'll see whether I can get by without it. Country of permanent residence is USA, and I'm a U.S. national. I don't mind telling them that because I probably have already told them that for one thing, and we'll see if I can go on. Please make the requested entry. Now, this bothers me. Why do they want to know how old I am? And I don't really want to tell them how old I am, and they're not giving me the option of specifying a range of dates. Usually it will say, how old are you? And they'll say, you know, 20 to 30, 31 to 40, that sort of thing, but they want to know specifically. So what I do in these kind of situations is I lie, and I'm saying I was born in 1964, which is not the case, and I'm just going to move on. Total length of time, length of your stay during which Pocket Time was used. Now that's interesting. Pocket Connect was used. I rented it for 7 days. I used it for 5, so it did not work for all the time. But here, interestingly, for the ages, they wouldn't give me a range. Here, they give me a range. And it's interesting. The interesting thing here is the minimum rental period was 5 days. and yet the first range is 1 to 4 days, so that doesn't make sense. Purpose of the stay was professional or private. Usually you don't see private, usually it's vacation, on holiday, personal. Private's a little bit different, but that's what I think they want. And again, that's probably a translation issue. I suspect somebody who speaks German, whatever word you use in Swiss German would translate to private. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. If you would like to share more information about you with us, e.g. a picture of yourself, please feel free to do so and send your pictures to Martina, and that was the address from which the email came from, and that means she's a real person, and that's kind of interesting to me, that they're giving a real person's name there. I assume it's a real, actual person. I don't know if I would ever send a picture of myself with this kind of thing, whatever. So maybe I'll send him one of my pictures, but I don't have a picture of myself using the item. Like to enter the prize draw? Sure. Now notice here, my anonymity is gone. Technically it's gone anyways because they know my email address, so I'm going to fill this information out for my privacy reasons. I'm not going to put it in here. They do give you a confidentiality statement here, so that's a good point. So I'm just going to move on, and they're mandatory, so they're telling me I have to fill it out to move on. So at this point, I'm just going to end the recording. And thank you for your time. I hope this was useful to you, looking to see how a professional survey designer thinks about surveys, and I hope I've pointed out a few shortcomings with the survey design that we see here. And as I've said in other ones, you really need to step back and ask at the end of looking at a survey, your own, and in this case for theirs, did the survey allow the respondent to present all the information that they want to present? And in this case, I would say yes, that is the case, because the critical thing to me was the opportunity to state about the bad experience I had, and while I didn't fill that out for sake of time, there was the opportunity to make the statement. We'll see if I'm going to go back and tell Martina my issue, but that's the thing we always want to step back and ask ourselves about our surveys. We design them with our internal blinders on, and we need to take off our internal blinders and look at the survey the way the respondent would look at the survey. And if the respondent comes away from a survey saying, but I didn't get to tell you the most critical thing, then the survey has holes in it. In this case, the only thing I didn't see was they didn't really ask about the quality of the transmission. There were some things in there, but it wasn't as overt as I might have liked. There were maybe a couple of other things, ease of connecting to the unit, the initial time. But overall, I'd say it was a pretty good survey that probably gets the information that they need in order to go on. And in particular, they were looking for marketing information. So with that, I'll suggest that if you want to read more, go to my website. I have lots of articles there, including other recordings, and on screen you're seeing the various types of advisory services that Great Book provides. Thank you much, and happy surveying.